So the second half of Wicked is coming out soon, because Hollywood has this habit of trying to milk franchises as much as possible, so they'll split what could have been one movie into two. Anyway, the reason I'm making this video is because Ariana Grande, who plays Glinda in these movies, made some comments that I took issue with. But before I get into what she said, I want to give some context. Also, I just want to say I don't have anything against Wicked. It's just that this is a pattern I've been seeing with these retellings. It's definitely not exclusive to Wicked. It's just something I wanted to discuss. Wicked was first published in 1995 by Gregory Maguire, but it's best known for its smash hit Broadway musical adaptation, which is one of those adaptations that's actually better than the book in my opinion. And for all intents and purposes, it is a college AU retelling fanfiction of The Wizard of Oz. Here Glinda, the Good Witch of the North, and Elphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West, go to college together and ultimately become best friends. But societal pressure and expectations drive them apart. The events of the original Wizard of Oz still happen, Dorothy's house being transported to the land of Oz by a tornado and ultimately killing the Wicked Witch of the East. However, this time around, Dorothy is largely cast in a negative light, rather than the hero of the story. This is one of those retellings that casts the villain from the original as this misunderstood victim. So basically, Elphaba was forced into the role of the Wicked Witch of the West because society mistreated her, as opposed to her just being a villain in her own right. So Wicked for Good will be dealing with this fallout, and Ariana Grande gave her perspective on the whole thing. But really quick before I get into all that, I did want to shout out my upcoming comic book. Em and I have been working on this project for quite a while now. It's a science fiction story called Shadow Paradox. It's about a man named Jason who's lived his entire life in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Monsters roam the wastes of a once great city, but his mentor and father figure, Dr. Gray, has invented a time machine to hopefully stop this apocalypse from ever happening. Once in the past, he has to gather allies, find out the mystery behind these monsters, and save the future. We plan on releasing it later this year, so subscribe to the channel if you want to see more updates. Thanks for hearing me out, this project means a lot to us. So the original Wizard of Oz follows Dorothy, a little girl who was transported to the land of Oz after a tornado whisked her house away. So she ends up lost and confused in this magical land where a witch is very angry with her and wants to kill her, because the house accidentally crushed the Wicked Witch of the East when it landed. The Wizard of Oz was originally published as a book, but most people know the story through the 1939 movie, which did take quite a few liberties with the source material. So since Wicked draws from the 1939 movie, it's kind of an adaptation of an adaptation. Changes are natural when it comes to adaptations, but the 1939 movie does keep true to the spirit of the original and its main story beats. The thing is, in my opinion, Wicked is so far removed from the original that it could probably just be its own franchise without a connection to the Wizard of Oz. Something I've noticed about these retellings that try to take a villain and put them in a more positive light have a tendency to take a character who had a lot of power in the original and spin them to be more of a victim and viewed more positively, while the character who originally had no power and were fighting against the odds that were stacked against them are seen in a more negative light, or even vilified by this new narrative, which is basically what's happening here with Dorothy and Elphaba. Let me explain. Also spoilers for both The Wizard of Oz and Wicked, although The Wizard of Oz has existed for over 100 years and Wicked for over 30, so I'm sure most people are already familiar with these stories, but still, here's your warning. So Dorothy's a little girl living on a farm with her aunt and uncle in Kansas. She's ultimately pretty discontent with her life, finding it dull, having bad neighbors like Miss Grunch who threatens her dog, and feeling unappreciated, and wishes she could go somewhere fun and magical, a place that actually has color, because the farm is so drab the only color she ever gets to see is the rainbow. But then the tornado thing happens and literally takes her to the exact place she was always dreaming of, except the Wicked Witch of the West is there and wants to kill her, and she is absolutely relentless. The witch is extremely powerful, and she's after, in this case, the ruby slippers to get even more power. But the slippers have found their way onto Dorothy's feet, which they've bound themselves to, and apparently the only way to get them off is if she dies. Glinda, the Good Witch, is able to send her away, but only temporarily. Dorothy just wants to go home, so Glinda sends her to the Wizard of Oz in Emerald City, telling her to follow the yellow brick road to get there. But it turns out Dorothy had the power to go home all along. All she had to do was click her heels together 3 times. The Scarecrow asks why she didn't just tell Dorothy that in the first place, and Glinda explains that she had to learn this lesson for herself, otherwise the magic wouldn't have worked.
That's all it is.
But that's so easy. I should have thought of it for you.
I should have felt it in my heart.
No, she had to find it out for herself. Now those magic slippers will take you home in 2 seconds.
The Wizard of Oz is a story of self-discovery, as Dorothy grows as a person along this adventure and through the connections she makes, to really appreciate what she has and that there's no place like home. But Wicked kinda ends up taking all of that out, with Glinda now being resentful to Dorothy. Dorothy was already lost and confused in the original, but now there's all this extra context that was made with Wicked, which she's also not privy to. So she doesn't know about the relationship between the witches of the North, East, and West, or how society treats them, with Elphaba being discriminated against because of her green skin, or the larger persecution against animals. Dorothy's literally just a girl who got dragged into all of this, but it doesn't stop Glinda from being resentful, and Ariana Grande said that she leaned into that resentment. Here it recontextualizes Glinda's intentions on having Dorothy follow the Yellow Brick Road. In this article by Empire, it says Dorothy's existence will mean major things for both Elphaba and Glinda, who, as Ariana Grande tells Empire, doesn't exactly give the farm girl the most direct route to her destination in telling her to follow the Yellow Brick Road. So the quote from Ariana Grande says, "I love the little bit of shadiness that Glinda has towards Dorothy. There's a lot going on and she doesn't really have time to deal with this." So already Glinda's being very dismissive to Dorothy, which is also pretty sad because in Wicked, Dorothy was basically kidnapped, where the headmistress of the school purposely summoned the storm to try to lure out Elphaba, and that's what dragged Dorothy to Oz. But Glinda's not trying to help Dorothy become a better person, she's just being petty. As Ariana goes on to say, she could have told her to take the Emerald City train, but she didn't. That's a little shady, Glinda. So I leaned all the way into Glinda sort of having an eye roll for Dorothy whenever she has to deal with her. So there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, in Wicked, there is a train that goes between Emerald City and Shiz University. Yes, it's called Shiz, it was the 90s. Although I think Grande got confused because in Wicked, that train doesn't actually go to Munchkinland, which is where Dorothy ends up when she gets transported to Oz. As you've probably caught on by now, Wicked has a lot of social issues going on, and Munchkinland is considered an impoverished area that the elites in the Emerald City don't consider servicing. So even if she did take the train, she'd have to make her way over to the university first anyway. But even ignoring the continuity error in her statement, this does take Glinda from this caring, fairy godmother-like figure to basically a mean girl who rolls her eyes whenever she has to deal with Dorothy, who again is a small lost child. Also, we can reframe the all-powerful and greedy Wicked Witch of the West as the unfortunate victim all along, while Dorothy is framed as this antagonist who got all the credit for taking down the Wicked Witch of the West. The thing is, Dorothy is an outsider who has nothing to do with any of the social issues that are affecting the witches. She literally has no idea what's going on, and she's being used as a pawn by people with magic and power. She basically gets pushed around by the narrative and then they're just done with her. We aren't even going to see her face in the movie, which I kind of think just proves that Wicked could have stood on its own without a connection to the Wizard of Oz. Like, I think it would have worked fine if they replaced Dorothy with Glinda. The entire narrative follows Glinda and Elphaba, how they become friends and ultimately have a falling out, all due to societal pressures. Dorothy is largely a glorified cameo. Basically what happens is that it more or less plays out in the original, where Dorothy throws water on the Wicked Witch of the West, melting her. But it turns out Elphaba faked her death, and she and the Scarecrow run off together to live in hiding, so that she won't be bothered anymore. But I think it would have made sense narratively if they had Glinda help her fake her death, and then help her cover her tracks so she can live in peace. I know that's a hot take, but I'm just saying, it feels like Dorothy is just here because of the Wizard of Oz connection, rather than actually being a character in her own right. Now she's also being heavily marketed, despite the fact that you won't see her face in the movie, but they're still making a ton of dolls with her that also look like Judy Garland, because despite the fact that the 39 movie was so long ago, it is still just as iconic as ever. I think Wicked could have made a point about misplaced anger. Like when people are mistreated, they'll lash out at those who have even less power than they do, which is pretty much what Glinda is doing to Dorothy, being very passive-aggressive, even though the train doesn't actually go to Munchkinland, so she wouldn't have that option available to her anyway, but still, the intention is there, and it would be nice if they had made that a character arc for Glinda, that her being resentful to Dorothy isn't really productive, and it's not like doing so is going to fix society, and it would probably do a better job of incorporating Dorothy into the story since we're stuck with her anyway. I'm just saying, these villains villain-centered retellings never know what to do with the hero, and it's just kind of awkward. But that's just my opinion. What do you guys think? Do you like these villain retellings? Or do you think they should just make a new IP? Let me know in the comments below, I'd love to hear from you. Before I go, I want to give a shout out to our members. Tyrant Carnivore, Shiny Orc Boy, Depth Charge Media, Samaru163, Gabby Hime, Verdant Range, JVR, Equestron, Norman Sweet Cream, Way Beyond Coincidence, Hunter Rose, 80s Nostalgia Guy, Felix Bam, Lucas Geist, J Draws, Meowsers, Sky, Philip, Isaac Martinez, Garcia XB Legend, Tobias Weller, Bandito Bane, Mac B909, Dakari the Professor, Omni Fair, Cavalcoj, Strider Exile, Phil C, Killer Bomb, Slawa Saporiguez, Entwined Boot 301, Griffin of Might, Frankie Camarillo, Datadyne Executive, Crimson Phantom, Jin the Goblin, Papa Hud 69, The Gengar King, Daunter, G-Rock, and Chaos Jumper. Thank you for the support, and if you want to become a member, you can hit the join button next to the subscribe button. We also have Buy Me Coffee if you want to support us that way. And if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and that part's free. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.